rising prices for affordability, well, it is a crisis, and Stats Canada has revealed their numbers yesterday, and here's the report essentially saying that the rising prices are affecting the ability of Canadians to meet day-to-day expenses, and this comes as April 2022 inflation is at 6.8% increase. This is a steadily increase that's supposed to go up, according to the Bank of Canada, until later this year, until potentially next year, when it could almost come down to the 2% quote that they have to be able to get inflation down to that rate. Now, when it comes to Stats Canada, they conducted a survey. It's called the Portrait of Canadian Society Survey between the April 19th and May 1st of 2022. And this was to understand how the rising prices are affecting Canadians and the financial concerns that they may have. And you'll be shocked to hear some of these stats that I'm going to read to you right now. It's nearly 3 in 4 Canadians reported that rising prices are affecting their ability to meet their day-to-day expenses. And the day-to-day expenses are such things as transportation, housing, food, and clothing. And now they've had to adjust their behavior to be able to afford to get by. And some of those things mean perhaps eating less, buying cheaper alternatives, and perhaps not moving, renting, or changing their home. So a lot of different items here. When it comes to lower income people in Canada, well, essentially there's more of a concern for them in the rising prices when it comes to being able to afford from day to day to month to afford it. Now, more than 2 in 5 Canadians report being most affected by the rising food prices, as in April 2022 compared to last year in April. Food prices rose 9.7%, with basic staples such as fresh fruits, 10% increase, meat, another 10%, fresh vegetables, 8.2%. All of those are compared to just the increase in a year. And when it comes to the 6 months prior to the survey being taken, that was just very recent, as of April 19th to May 1st, 6 months prior to that, when asked how they've been most affected, well, 43% of Canadians said they've been mostly impacted with their ability to purchase food. 43% is significant not to be able to eat the way they used to here in Canada, first world nation, and this is these are what we're talking about now. After food, the most affected is transportation at 32%, and shelter comes at 9%, and household operations at 8%, essentially saying that in urban, residents reported the most affected by the high prices are in food, 44%, and when it comes to residents living in rural areas, well, it's transportation at 43%, with the high rates in gas prices. And for those Canadians who have to travel and top up their vehicles with gas, well, 94% said that it's very difficult, and they're very concerned about the rising prices. That's 94%. That's a very significant amount of people who are very concerned about the rising prices of gas. And 1 in 5 Canadians expect that they're likely to obtain food or meals from a community organization in the next 6 months. That could be food banks, community centers, faith-based organizations, school programs, community gardens, in the next 6 months, to be able to just eat. And people who also donate to food banks, there's less donations that are coming through because they're also worried about their ability to afford living in Canada. When it comes to younger Canadians, more likely than older Canadians, they're very concerned about their ability to afford housing or rent. That is also a recent poll had come out that renters in Toronto are choosing between being able to pay their rent or eating food, and they're eating 20% less food. So about 56% of Canadians are very concerned about whether they can afford housing or rent, and these are younger Canadians. Because of shelter costs, the high prices for rental accommodations, and just the overall pricing of being able to afford water, fuel, electricity, which all of them have risen 7.4% year over year in April 2022 compared to last April. and that's the highest it's been since 1983. That's a 39-year high. That's very significant. And when it comes to how they're going to cope with this, well, they're saying that they're going to adjust their spending habits and lifestyle to cope with inflation, which means 47% have found themselves purchasing cheaper alternatives, brands and items. 45% have delayed making purchases in response to the rising prices. And so when you're talking about cheaper items, when it comes to food, that means less people are eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and probably more frozen. And as you know, the meals that are not very healthy are the cheapest, and that's the unfortunate case. There was a statistic done during the recession in 2008, found that more people bought McDonald's. The sale prices of McDonald's went through the roof because it was the cheapest items to eat and to buy in that time period. And there's a lot of speculation that we might be heading into a recession. So this is where the state is at. And according to the Stats Canada survey that was done, 27% of Canadians reported that they have had to borrow money from friends or relatives to be able, or take additional debt by using credit cards and actually dipping into their savings just to be able to meet their day-to-day expenses. And this is what they foresee for the next 6 months, that they'll be in that situation. About 24% of Canadians have had to draw into their savings in order to pay for their expenses.